I'd like to welcome you all today to the TAFE SA Reconciliation Action Plan launch. We welcome everyone here in the atrium on campus in Adelaide and those of us joining online. My name is Kathleen Drew and I am the Director of Future Industry and Trade here at TAFE SA, and I'll be your MC for the morning. First of all, I'd like to say that TAFE acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we live and work, and recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' unique cultural and spiritual relationship to the sky, land and waters of South Australia. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We are committed to engaging with Aboriginal communities and people to support, develop and empower them in their communities. So, to start today's proceedings, I would ask that you all follow me outside to the front entrance where we will have an official smoking ceremony and welcome to country led by Robert Taylor. Robert Taylor is a Kaurna man and with his team will lead the smoking ceremony. Robert performs with the Kumakaru dance group, which translates to One Blood, that shares culture and stories through dance and workshops.
All right, how are we all? Yes. Good, I'm going to ask you again. You're going to say Marnie, nah, Marnie? I just gave you the answer, you followed. Nah, Marnie? Marnie, I means I'm good. The Kumakaru dance group, Kumakaru means one blood in Kaurna language. We represent many different Aboriginal groups from around, not just from around South Australia, but from Australia. We incidentally don't get to be involved in this because you see most of our mobs up there. We all come together to showcase language and culture and educate people as well. We've been doing this a long time, and to see young fellas now growing up as young men, young women to be able to do this, and now the next generation coming through. We've been the first generation to grow up with language and culture from young kids and being able to do that publicly. So we're honoured every opportunity we can because I guess we get to pass on the knowledges that our old fellas have passed on to us as well. Yeah, I'll keep talking, mate, we can do that then. So we're going to be involved in smoking this place and cleansing the place as well. This is about acknowledging new spirit, new life, new beginnings. Set from birth of our children and deaths of our elders and all ceremonies in between. Smoking and cleansing is part of a new beginning. So we're inviting you all to come involved with be involved in this as well. We do want to acknowledge everybody for coming here as well, all of our uncles and aunties that have led the way for us. We do want to start by acknowledging our spiritual ancestors of the country that we stand on. Tarnaganya, the birthplace of the big red kangaroo, and it's only proper for us to acknowledge those ancestors before we start our ceremony and dancing as well. So we do that through songs. We ask for their blessing of country and also blessing of people that are gathered here as well. And I reckon you can translate this bit. Mare jangan lupa kau kan ini apa? Ada uang dari mana pun dengan rupiah kan. Afghan people we welcome you to the country. From the Yankee man, from the Pindy Yankee, I think the money put in rupiah kan. Acknowledge and welcome all other Aboriginal people from different lands, and also the non-Aboriginal people that call this place home as well. Reconciliation Week is a really special week for a lot of us to understand each other's lives and journeys. And I always tell people, like, when I do this, I always acknowledge my dad is Italian and Scottish, and I think reconciliation started with my mum and dad, and even before it was even a thing, I'm just a product of it. So to sit here and out of Yarmouth, you've all over directly, it's pretty deadly, you know, because this was happened a long time ago. That's just my crap joke. Anyway, so we'll get on to our first dance, which is our welcoming dance. We call it Untitled, which is a good spirit dance. Good classic mother mentality. I'll just dance with the kid on the shoulder. Same for Friday night, it's not the kid on the shoulder. Look, we're going to do another dance. The dance will pay respect to this place. Time to go now. Name you after the big red kangaroo. This is the dance of Darren and the big red kangaroo. Love to shake legs, it's like show-off dance. Every time we come back, we look at each other and like, I've got you beat this time. It's the only way for us to be able to show off that little bit. For those that don't really know much about the shake legs and dance as well, it's like a traditional pick-up line for us. Well, it's from the heart and faster we shake your legs, we go like, ooh, yeah, I like that one. So we're like looking at each other like, I'm going to impress here, but it's never worked ever. I just like to say that. This dance, the next one I'm going to do is finish off with Garley, which is a boomerang dance that actually comes from the Western Desert, taught by our uncle who then taught to us. Really got us involved in relearning language and culture, the way that we get to acknowledge him as well by doing this dance, because he set us all on this path. After we do that, we're going to invite you to come down before you go inside. You can come down and throw some of the smoke on yourself. You can cleanse yourself, and then you can go back into all the boring stuff, all the cool stuff down here. So you can stick out here with us if you want to. This is dance with garlic, the boomerang. Thank you, Mob, for allowing us to come do this. We love this opportunity to showcase culture as much as possible. We're very amazing society, really big on this week about educating our mob and letting you know that our culture is for everybody. This isn't just for Aboriginal people. That's the reason why we do this, for you all to understand it. Because these laws and protocols and processes that are for us, it's from the country, and all of us, it's all of our responsibility. Think about culture, think about the responsibilities that like health and safety is everybody.
You're right there.
I'd like to start off by thanking a few special guests for joining us today, including members of our Elder Advisory Team, members of our Regional and Metropolitan Aboriginal Access Centres, members of our TAFE Board, staff and students. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the guest speakers from whom we'll hear this morning. Joe Denley, Chair, TAFE Board, David Coltman, Chief Executive, TAFE, and David Rathman, AM, PSM, FIML. It's now my great pleasure to welcome to the stage our first speaker of today, Chair of TAFE Board, Joe Denley. Ms Denley has been a TAFE Board Director since 1st of November 2012 and has contributed greatly to quality improvements in TAFE. She is a professional and experienced business advisor and independent board director with strong management and leadership skills. She is highly experienced in human resource and risk management and has a depth of understanding of the TAFE sector. Please join me in making Jo feel welcome.
Thank you, Kath, and good morning, and thank you for being here today as we celebrate National Reconciliation Week and launch TAFE's first Reconciliation Action Plan. That was a wonderful welcome ceremony, and I'd like to reiterate our formal acknowledgement that's been co-designed by the Reconciliation Action Plan Committee. TAFE acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we live and work and recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' unique cultural and spiritual relationship to the sky, land and waters of South Australia. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and are committed to engaging with Aboriginal communities and people to support, develop and empower them and their communities. On behalf of the TAFE Board, I would like to formally thank the members of our Aboriginal Elders Advisory Group, Dr Roger Thomas, Jeffrey Newchurch, Eunice Aston, Rosalind Coleman, Basil Coleman, Harry Agius, Frank Lampard, David Rathman, Clinton Wanganeen, Lynette Crocker and Joylene Thomas. Many of you are here today, and I want to thank you for your invaluable assistance with the development of our Reconciliation Action Plan. I would also like to acknowledge Shirl Chartrand from Reconciliation South Australia and a number of past educators who are present today who've been long-time supporters of TAFE. National Reconciliation Week is a time for all Australians to learn about our shared histories, cultures and achievements, and to explore how each of us can contribute to achieving reconciliation in Australia. National Reconciliation Week is held on the same dates each year, from the 27th of May to the 3rd of June. These dates commemorate two significant milestones in the reconciliation journey: the successful 1967 referendum and the High Court Mabo decision. On the 27th of May 1967, Australia's most successful referendum saw more than 90% of Australians vote to change the Constitution, giving the Australian government power to make laws that include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, recognising them in the census. Until this point, under the laws of the Australian government, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples were not included as citizens. On the 3rd of June 1992, the Australian High Court delivered the Mabo decision, the culmination of Eddie Mabo's challenge to the legal principle of terra nullius, meaning land belonging to no one. The High Court found that terra nullius should never have been applied to Australia and recognised Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of lands. This decision paved the way for native title. TAFE SA's vision for reconciliation recognises and acknowledges the injustices of the past, respects cultural diversity and advocates for self-determination. At TAFE SA, we promote equality, equity and cultural safety in education, training and employment opportunities. We're honoured to have our first Reconciliation Action Plan being launched as part of National Reconciliation Week, and I thank you all for attending today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. I'd now like to welcome David Coltman. David was appointed to the role of Chief Executive of TAFE SA in April 2019. Prior to joining TAFE SA, David was Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Swinburne University and Chair of the National Institute of Circus Arts, NICA. David holds postgraduate qualifications in adult education and public administration. His early career work focused on the delivery of programs that sought to increase participation in higher education and underrepresented communities, in particular Maori, Pacific and refugee communities. More recently, David's work in the development of programs preparing people for highly digitised work environments, Industry 4, has been recognised nationally. David has been heavily involved in the governance of community organisations and has a strong commitment to the role of education in transforming lives through improving access to employment outcomes and economic parity. David.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I too would like to start by acknowledging that we are standing on Kaurna lands today, and that is a huge privilege and something that we are mindful of every day. I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respect to elders present, those past and those emerging through our ranks here at TAFE SA. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to all of our special guests, including the TAFE SA board, our TAFE SA board chair, Jo Denley, the members of the Aboriginal Elders Advisory Group. I want to acknowledge the staff that have travelled here today from Sejuna and Port Augusta, and those that are travelling here virtually through our online streaming to participate today. I also want to thank our staff who attended the regional and metropolitan engagement sessions that helped inform the development of our first Reconciliation Action Plan, and to our Aboriginal engagement consultant, Joylene Thomas, who we owe a great deal of thank you to. And for those of you who know Joylene, I have many bruises in my back from being pushed by her, which is a great privilege, and I am grateful for. It is with great pride to be launching our first Reconciliation Action Plan during National Reconciliation Week. This year's theme is More Than Words. Reconciliation takes action, and this launch is a step forward for us. Our Reconciliation Action Plan, or Reflect RAP as it's known, signals TAFE SA's commitment to making reconciliation a priority. The Reflect RAP provides a framework for cultural change within our organisation, and through it we make a commitment to better serving the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island staff and student communities, providing greater opportunities and improved outcomes. We'll deliver these outcomes by increasing our collective understanding and respect of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island histories, by listening and by hearing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island voices, and by recognising in our curriculum the unique knowledges that have sustained Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island communities for thousands and thousands of years. South Australia is home to more than 30 Aboriginal language groups, and as the public provider of vocational education and training across our state, it is our privilege and our responsibility to connect with these diverse groups, both as educators and employers. These are connections we value and connections we wish to grow. In developing this, our Reflect RAP, we've reflected on our past responsiveness to the needs and aspirations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples, and have sought input and feedback on how we can do better. This is including receiving very honest and frank feedback from elders and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island employees, staff and students. These discussions have been important for us. They've provided the information and insights which have guided our decision making, and I want to thank all of those who took part in this process. Excuse me. Something I'm thrilled to draw your attention to is the absolutely amazing artwork on our Reflect RAP. The artwork was designed by Karen Briggs, who's a proud Yorta Yorta woman from the New South Wales and northeastern Victorian border. Karen has a Bachelor of Design and Illustration from the University of South Australia, but more importantly, of course, a Diploma in Applied Design Multimedia from TAFE SA. This wonderful artwork is a visual metaphor representing a map of South Australia showing TAFE SA campuses as waterholes, represented by the larger circles, with the elements of land, sea and river, through colour reflecting the 8 regions that span our state, from the greens and blues of the south through to the rich ochre of the far north. The horseshoe shapes around the waterholes represent Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal students and educators meeting together in a place of respecting diversity and of sharing of each other's knowledge and culture. The lines connecting the waterholes represent the networking of people to courses across the region. The waterhole design shows each campus as a significant place of learning and collaboration between students and educators. And it shows how TAFE SA is actively creating a supportive learning environment where Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people can thrive together and acquire the skills and knowledge they need to create a pathway for the future and a pathway to employment and further education. I'd now like to ask Karen to come to the stage and accept, as a token of our thanks, some flowers from our students. Karen. Thank you, Karen, for your wonderful work, and thanks again to all of you for being part of our launch today. This is the start of a very formal commitment by TAFE SA to contribute to a more just, equitable and reconciled Australia. We recognise that we have plenty of work to do, but we are determined to do it and determined to take action. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker this morning is David Rathman, AM, PSM, FIML. And for those of you who don't know the letters behind his name, AM, Order of Australia, PSM, Public Service Medal, FIML, Fellow of the Australian Institute of Managers and Leaders. David Rathman was born and raised in the city of Port Augusta, South Australia. From 1976 through to 2014, he held a number of public service positions across South Australia, including Aboriginal community worker, Senior Aboriginal Community Worker, Staff Development, being a member of the Australian Government Committee advising on the future of Aboriginal education, Director, Office of Aboriginal Affairs, Chief Executive, Department of State Aboriginal Affairs, Executive Director, Aboriginal Education and Employment Services, and Executive Director of Student Aboriginal and Family Services. David commenced at TAFE SA in 1981. In 1982, David acted as the head of school for Aboriginal education. David went on to be the first head of school at TAFE SA, which was then set up on Wakefield Street. David was awarded the Public Service Medal in 1993 and is a Fellow of the Australian Institute of Managers and Leaders. On Australia Day in 2000, he was made a member of the Order of Australia, receiving his medal for services to Aboriginal affairs, particularly for the delivery of SA government services in the areas of education and community welfare. He was also awarded a Centenary Medal by the Australian Government. David continues to serve the Aboriginal community in South Australia, and TAFE SA is honoured to have him here with us today. Please join me in welcoming to the stage David Rathman.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Education's working when you can hear the buzz of students. I think Brian Stanford designed this atrium deliberately so none of us would forget that's what it's all about. And it's a great pleasure to be here today, and I'd like to acknowledge two Kaurna elders who are with us, Frank Wanganeen and Lynn Crocker, and also to acknowledge other Kaurna representatives who are with us today, and also those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from other parts of South Australia as well. And to acknowledge your origins in terms of your country as well. It's very important that we all respect the country. And that great artwork, well done. It looks very impressive out the front. I'd like to thank Jo Denley, the Chair of the Board, and members of the Board, also David Coltman, the CEO, Jolene Thomas for the work that she's done. Jolene can be a pain in the neck. She's very persistent, very insistent, and she's the only one, brother and I were at a meeting years ago, and she was the only one that was disagreeing with us, and yet she's from the same territory as us, so no one else in the room was, but mainly Jolene. But Jolene's done a great job on this task. I'd also like to mention Mark Mibus, who's in charge of the Access Centre. The two very special people that I see here who were first TAFE people on the ground, Ron Greaves and Solvega Greaves, who ran the first mobile learning centre ever in Australia. It's a great tribute to both of you, and thanks for coming today. And we remember some of the TAFE people, such as David Westover and others. I began in TAFE when we were still in the building that's now the Remand Centre. Some might remember. And then Brian's great dream was this particular institution here. Some of us in those days believed that over-capitalisation of education was a mistake. that you can build buildings, but you can't attract people if you don't go to where the people are. And one of the great things about reconciliation plans such as this is that you need to remember that this is about people. It's about the journey of people, both as educators and as those people who are receiving the learning, that all of them combined together are important. So I want to acknowledge today the work of leaders in the education field in TAFE who play a critical and vital role in the delivery of the services to our people. And I want to acknowledge the Aboriginal people who've journeyed through the TAFE system. Often the TAFE system has taken second place, but if you look at some of the leaders in our community, many of them went through TAFE, and they got their first experiences through institutions such as this. So I acknowledge the great work of your business. The one area that I did look at, which interested me a great deal, was the question of relationship. The latest survey shows that over 70% of Australians still believe that there is racism endemic in our society. This hasn't changed all that much. The great battle in TAFE is not the structural battle, it's a battle of the minds of the people that deliver the services and manage the organisation. There is still racism in this organisation. It needs to be attended to. It needs to be dealt with because it's a barrier to access for people of different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, and particularly Aboriginal people. What I've seen in my time observing all of this is that governments have moved from public to a business provider system. We need to balance our public commitment, our social obligation, because when you look at the statistics as it relates to my community and the communities I come from, we can go to the green zone. Those are people with employment, and their children are encouraged to learn and be part of learning. So they're in the green zone. In the amber zone are the many young people who attend schools and stay at school and can take advantage of this system. Then there is that group who fit in the 25 to 35% of people who are unemployed, who are socially and basically poverty-driven in their life. This is a real challenge for an education system that has been driven by bureaucrats towards an approach that is about business. You have to have people before you can have trained individuals. When we took the people out of public and made it private, what have we got now? A shortage in skilled labour. That's a direct result of removing public from the whole system of TAFE. TAFE is an extremely important institution. Let me now go to the red zone. The red zone for our community was stated very clearly by Penny Wright, the State Guardian for Children. This is the challenge. 4,136 young South Australians are in care. Of those 4,136, 1,519 are Aboriginal children. Have we learnt anything from bringing them home? Have we learnt anything from the 1937 meeting of Aboriginal Affairs ministers when they said we need to work on a scheme for absorption of Aboriginal people? It seems we've learnt very little. The ratio of Aboriginal children in care went from 62.1% to 84.5%. The rate for non-Aboriginal children is 10% per 100,000. For educators and bureaucrats in the education system, this is the new challenge. If you're going to deliver to the Aboriginal community take stakeholder out of your vocabulary and replace it with people and community. Because unless you attend to people and community, you can have all the stakeholders that you like. And the best place you can put them is on your barbecue. Because what we need is greater commitment to people and community. That will give us the results that we're looking for. This particular plan, as I understand, has taken quite a while. You wouldn't have thought TAFE was actually tripping over itself to do this, but it has now done it, and I congratulate those who've pushed to get this to where it is today. As an Aboriginal person who's been around a little while, I'm still in the system, I'm still working. I still believe very strongly in further education. I think it's the underdog in many ways, but there are too many private providers who are making a profit out of people. What we need to put is greater public effort for our community to receive the benefits. And that will only occur if governments get out of the silly notion that everything will be delivered by private providers. Not true. This is a great institutional structure and needs to be kept going, but needs to return back to the people. Our people want that to happen sooner rather than later. Congratulations on this particular first step. The next step is people taking action.
I would truly like to thank those of you who've attended today, both here on campus, on the Adelaide campus, and those via live broadcast. And for those who could not attend today, we have also recorded the session. The 2021 National Reconciliation Week theme, more than a word, reconciliation takes action, urges the reconciliation movement towards braver and more impactful action. For those of you here today, I ask you to think about what action you can take. And if comfortable, I'd like you to take the opportunity to write it down on these postcards that you'll find at the back. And note on these cards what action you will commit to individually. For staff online, please email your actions through to aboriginalengage@tafesa.edu.au. Now I'd like to close the ceremony, but I'd like to invite you to join us for morning tea. Thank you.